you're back in the familiar palatial abode.
What's going on, man? Do you care much about the Super Bowl?
I'm not so into either of the teams. I got some squares I'm going to be rooting on, but that's about it.
Yeah, I don't really want either. I mean, I'm not a New England hater, but I don't specifically want them to win. But I guess if I had a gun to my head, I'd root for the Patriots. Tom Chan is a big Patriots fan.
Has he got like some Boston connection or something I don't know about?
He is from Maine, so that's where that all comes from. Stephen King territory.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome to Derry.
What did you make of becoming TikTok famous today, Dan?
Let's face it, I'm clickbait, baby. It's a whole new platform for us because if we're established anywhere, it's on the audio streaming. And so having the video now, it's almost kind of like starting over in a way for audiences there.
You ready to do this thing?
Let's go.
Welcome to this episode of the Prestige-ish Media Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lake, and with me is my me-car, Dan McNair. Dan, how's it going this evening?
I've been really busy, Craig. I've got this side project I don't know if I've told you about. It's an all kazoo band, and we're titled Treason by Puppetry.
Okay, I like
So
it.
look for it coming soon.
We also would have accepted Steely Pete as an alternate band name. So is Steely Dan just a guy, or is it like a band?
I think it's like a whole band of dudes.
Yeah, so Steely Pete plays. We're talking about A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, season one, episode four. A little treat for us. It aired early because of the Super Bowl. But as we know from previous shows, now we'll have a longer wait till the next episode. So a little bit of pro, a little bit of con. What did you think of this episode, Dan? It was episode four, but it's titled Seven.
Enjoyed it, not probably as much. Like the last one was really my favorite of the season so far, but I still think this one was better than the first two. So I landed on an 8 as far as a score. And with some of these quicker episodes, we haven't done historically a lot of half-hour shows. I mean, we did It's Always Sunny, and we kind of would bundle a couple things together. But, if I don't get a couple notes down quick, I look down at the end of it and I'm like, what did I just see? It's a little different.
Still 3 pages of notes over here as your loyal podcaster. Yeah, I've got it as a 9, and it's more of a cumulative rating at this point. I just really like this show. There's nothing I don't like about it. And it's ideal for me for a Game of Thrones show. I feel like I'm back in that world. And I think it does show you don't have to flash from 80 characters positions. And we have talked about how Game of Thrones does that better than some of any shows in history. But also, I feel like every show now, and as a podcast host, timeline wise, you're bouncing from storyline to storyline, and it just gets exhausting. And I'm really enjoying what this is for what it is, and still being in this familiar world that I like to be in. And we know the tone is there's danger for Sir Duncan, but it's not that dark for a Game of Thrones show. As our TikTok knows, we got the javelin to the horse neck last week, and you got a broken finger, but still, it's not really dark, or it doesn't do a lot of things to make me feel icky. Any reactions to those statements on your end, Dan?
All I'm walking away with is this is probably the highest score you've ever given an episode that didn't have a boob.
And that might also be true. No, I need to be panhandling around Ashford. Can I have a boobs?
In Craig's world, it's been a long, dry spell.
Gosh, I probably look like the one-eyed knight at this point, if you will. We started with right in the cell. It's pretty wet and rainy. Egg shows up and starts trying to apologize. He brings him food. I know it's Targaryen colors and not a one for one, but he did have a little mini me Viserys vibe to him, as he both the bald with the robe was
He's
definitely
he's
given.
both a dragon and a little bird at the same time.
And somebody tried to cut his wiener off. I mean, they're birds of a feather, for crying out loud. He said that his uncle, who is the heir to the throne, Prince Baylor, told him he should beg for his forgiveness for lying to him. So that was partially an early relief that we weren't going to have to deal with him looking like he had abducted a child. But then we did get that, but nobody really believes it. So I think it's kind of advantage push there. What did you make of that part of the scheme that like Baylor wanted Egg to apologize to him, but then also we find out about his brother Darren's deal on the other side, blaming him.
So it seems like Baylor is the only Targaryen worth his salt. And through history, it seems like the Targaryens are like, I don't know, 70 to the like mad, crazy, violent, temperamental side. And it's nice every once in a while to mix in one that's reasonable. And we definitely get that from Baylor in this episode. And maybe you're going to hit on it next, but we kind of left off the previous podcast with the after episode notes that you had seen speculating that Dunk was going to be kind of offended and ticked off because he put his trust in Aegon and Aegon had somehow deceived him. And I think we moved past that. Like they gave it the moment's pause, but it didn't become like a 3 episode arc. And I was kind of pleased to see that.
I agree, and I totally liked that better. And it was just a very weird play from the director of the episode. Some of her end of episode descriptions, I forget the term for it, but like and this isn't what she's doing, but it's a version of this. When Marvel's like, I'm doing Marvel's Shakespeare is this movie, or this is Marvel's Roe v. Wade, or what's the one like Kramer versus Kramer? This is Marvel's Kramer versus Kramer, or something.
I think you're confusing Kramer from Seinfeld with the 70s divorce movie about child custody.
And what was that one? Kramer versus Kramer?
Yeah, but it's a husband versus a wife.
But they'll just be like directors will be like, this Frankenstein movie is really more like Carrie, and it's okay. And it's just kind of that director speak where they're just kind of talking out their ass. So it's not a one for one, but I would just say I feel like maybe there was a little ass talking. I do think she generally directed good episodes, though. So Egg said that it was his brother that shaved his head, that he was supposed to squire for his brother, but his brother was too scared to joust, and so that's why he ran away. I thought this was kind of an interesting quote from Dunk. He said, you would have served a donkey were it squireless. And this type of betrayal seemed more of natural, like that he was insecure about, he only wanted to be any squire, not Sir Dunk squire. And that I could see being more offensive than being lied to. That hurting more to me. That would hurt more than being lied to, feeling that way.
Yeah, I think that statement said a lot about Dunk because it was part of that self-depreciating, I'm a nobody and people just say I'm stupid, dot, dot, dot. And it felt like maybe piling on that narrative to Dunk, but that's obviously not really where Egg is coming from.
Yeah, it's not exactly, but it is true in some ways. I'm just going to ram all these simile, metaphors, allegories. But like when the high school guy dates the ugly girl and they turn her pretty, and then it's, I really do like you. But it may have started one way, but it ended a completely different way. But, Egg was just down for the ride, I think, at first.
Join us for more She's All That coverage next week.
So to that point, Dunk goes in to see Prince Baylor. He has him rise. And then we see, like you said, it's a pretty quick turn with Dunk where he starts talking about how Egg's a good boy and didn't mean any harm. So I thought that was cool. But then we also see that Egg's bloodlust comes out when he says that he wished Duncan would have killed him. And so you can tell that this uncle is the reasonable uncle, that he doesn't really like Aryan, it wouldn't seem anyway, but he does. I think he is loyal to family within reason. So it is an interesting dynamic, but he is trying to at least explain to Duncan the situation. So he explains that he's been cast as a Robin Knight. To your point, Duncan talks about how ridiculous the treason accusations are. because he was asking about what would happen to Too Tall Tanzel. And he said, what, treason by puppetry? And it was described that it would be more of like an incitement. And then I think we get to the meat of it, which is, don't all knights make the same oath? Aren't they supposed to have honor, defend the innocent? And that seems to be the recalling refrain of this episode. Anything from you on that sequence there?
The thing that I like that we get from Dunk is yes, he's slow and he's big, but at times his true pure nature like lends itself to some good wit. When he could like that treason by puppetry line isn't what you would normally do Dunk, but it somehow works. And later they talk about Darian like accusing him of basically kidnapping Egg. And like there might be a character like Dunk that'd be like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. But he goes, and he had no honor. He didn't pursue the captor. It's been 4 nights.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it worked because somebody that's all about honor and this sort of thing can have that mindset while still not necessarily being the sharpest wit.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing, somebody that's not like book smart or learned, but he's been traveling with this other knight for a long time. There's plenty of things he has learned. But I agree, and think I mentioned as well before, think somebody could be cast in this role and play it too oafish, and he hasn't done that. And I think it makes that and the egg performance make the show. And that's not to discount there are some other good performances. And so we hear him being Baylor ask him, how good of a knight are you really? He leads him to believe that they're going to ask. He tells Dunk his only hope is to ask for trial by combat. So he prepares him for that. We go into this, it almost looks like the King's table, but it's not, or maybe it's like the Lord of Ashford's table, but I didn't see Plum running around. I guess I just didn't as distinctly notice it, or we haven't noticed it on the show before. But Prince Baylor definitely did have the hand of the kingpin on him. So I just wanted to point that out.
No,
I'm
that's a good observation.
99% sure I saw that. And Arian asks for a trial of 7. Any comments on that? Any comments on his nut opening skills? It was an interesting piece of business. I don't know. I didn't hate it, but I don't think it did anything for me either. Any takes either way there?
You're always fascinated on the nuts, but much like Jessica Z, apparently I miss certain things regarding the male anatomy when they're on the screen. So I'll have to defer to your expertise there. Yeah, Arian is, I think I compared him to Damon from House of the Dragon early on, and here he kind of follows through on just like he's sneaky, he's violent, like he's unlikable.
Yeah, he does have a certain swagger to him, and he is unlikable. To me, and maybe it's just the you mess with the dragon or whatever it was from last episode, like how Khaleesi's brother was to her early on.
Interesting.
He was a little more, I would say, effeminate. Like this guy's at least a little bit more of a fighter, but they're both that same annoying build as well. So at dawn, they're supposed to have this 7-by-7 fight. It was invoked from, 6,000 years ago. It used to be a thing that
The Andals.
supposedly like more people being involved would make it the result more just. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. Makar was really riding his son's ass about it. He was not impressed, which I liked.
Yeah, I did that too. I was actually thinking it was going to be 7 against 1 when the idea was first floated out there. And so it seems a little far-fetched that I guess they put him in the position where he's got to get 6 nights within 6 hours and run this crazy kind of scavenger hunt for knights, basically assuming he's going to fail and that way he's just got to forfeit. But at the time, when you don't really know what the stakes are if he can't get 6 other nights, I figured it was just going to wind up being 7 against 1. And this is how he shows, somehow rises above.
Yeah, and they had teased the 7-on-7 concept in the last week episode, so I held that so it would be a surprise for you and some of our listeners who didn't watch that. But yeah, that was generally was what I was expecting. I would have thought that if they were like a guy or two short, they could still fight. You know what I mean? I didn't think it would be an all or nothing type of deal. So I was very surprised. Early on, Stefan always seemed like a piece of shit. And I'm like, I have misjudged this guy.
You're talking
He's,
about Fossaway?
yeah, yeah. And I thought maybe we talked about Raymond's kind of like anti government rhetoric in last episode. And so I bought into it. Like maybe he's just feels the same way. But alas, that was not to be true. Your
I
thoughts
had
there?
the exact same read. I'm like, why is he putting his life at risk to come to Sir Dunk's aid? Like, he must just really like fighting. Because that's all we saw of him earlier was like beating up his cousin and, come on, challenge me. I want to fight. And so I'm like, I guess my read was a little bit off on him. But alas, we had the same read and it proved true.
Yeah, if you'd asked me before the episode, could Stefan ever be a redeemable character to me, or is he a piece? I'd have been like, he's a piece of shit. And as I was watching it, I was like, I can't believe they turned me on Steven. I wouldn't have thought it was possible. And then they backstabbed us with some sort of cat's paw dagger. So his one thing was, and this made sense, like for his character that was a dick. If I ask myself whether to do something, the answer is always more glory. And we did get a lot of woe is me from Duncan. Maybe this is the gods deciding my place for not knowing my fate. Raymond is a pretty good hype man, no? Like he's got maybe a little too much Sir Podrick energy, but I'm trying to think of who else would have been like him in the previous series. But I really like Raymond. How's he shaking out for you as the hype man to old mopey Dunk?
No, I think he's good in support. I don't want to see a whole Raymond Fossaway spin-off show, but just in support, a couple scenes this episode and that episode, it's just about right.
Yeah, and I think most of the other characters have been balanced pretty well at this point. Like I said last week, I got one a mini Lionel dancing around naked, but it was nice to see Lionel return to form. I just don't want to see him so one-dimensional because I think the Lionel character is actually very interesting as long as it's not played one note Jack Sparrow-ish. So I was glad to see him return to form this episode. I think we both would have predicted he would have joined him in battle, but how did you react to his performance this episode?
No, I thought again it was good and not maybe as flamboyant as before, like more true knight stuff. And yeah, I had him pegged on my scorecard, figuring we need 14 knights and the show has really only given us like five.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's who do I know and where do they wind up?
So we get an interesting tale where Darren is apologizing to Dunk for having to accuse him of taking him, but he didn't really like that was the only choice he felt he really had. And then we have Egg tell the story, this troubling story of, and I couldn't tell if we were getting into a Vecna situation or if it was just more of the teasing them about the riding a dragon pig thing that we've seen in House of the Dragon. But he said he put his knife between his legs and said he'd cut off his peeper and make him his sister and marry him. And then Darren also alluded to him being pretty bad as well. He threw his cat in a well. Not since Bart threw his walkie-talkie down a well have we seen such heinous things take
Do I
place
need
in
to go back and
television.
check off the top right box?
I needed to make sure you got it. Thoughts on that exchange?
Okay, two predominant ones. First off, I mean, there is a lot of lore out there for this show, and I like to remind our viewers and listeners, like, I haven't read the story. I try and stay away from the reels and memes and hints and things. And very early on, we had speculated that Darian was the other guy in the inn in the first episode. So I liked that played out and some imaginary points and a pat on the back for us for
Yeah, and
seeing that through.
you definitely had that better pegged than I did, for sure.
And then also, I thought it was really funny as they talked about, he was going to cut it off, call him his sister and marry him. And Ray, like Raymond
Oh,
guffawed.
I actually thought that I didn't think it landed.
He kind of did because he was the one that said, like, the most noble thing they can do is, come
Oh,
on the tits. And
yeah,
so you
and
get this incestuous thing from a Targaryen. And he's
yeah.
like, oh, you just went there.
Yeah, I guess it would be funnier to me under the context of, see, I told you, like, all this was in the Epstein files. I told you all along. Like, in that context, also terrible subject matter, but it is funny more in that context than just laughing at this poor 9-year-old boy talking about his brother climbing into his bed with a knife between his peeper at night.
And that's just, we heard Ray go on that rant about the Targaryens, and now this is like the first time he's ever been like in the presence of them, seemingly. And this
Yeah.
is what they deliver him, and he's like, oh yeah, I was dead on.
In that context, it's a lot funnier. And I'm sure, thank God that Sir Arlen didn't ever use his sword on Duncan, or he would be walking funny to this day, for crying out loud. So we did get that early play in the end from Darren about I dreamed of you, and it was really weird. But now we get a pissing scene, so you can put that back on the board. But he's taking a piss and he is telling him about the dream, that he dreamed of him having a dead dragon. And so I I'm still kind of concerned about the egg metaphor of him being a king and being on fire or whatever that is. That one's still scary, and him killing a knight. I assume this isn't where we go, but I'm like, I don't want to see Duncan ever have to kill Egg or something, but I assume maybe it has more to do with the battle. I wanted to bring up one other thing. When we started this, we're thinking that this son is the Darren. And he kind of is, but he kind of isn't. Because if you remember in House of the Dragon,
King Viserys, yeah.
yeah, Viserys, he always wanted to have dreams. Like, it's a very special Targaryen thing, and he wanted his
Yeah.
sons to have dreams. And that was like,
And but Damon gets him.
yeah, but it was like almost like one of the higher honors. And now we have this that's getting him. And I thought also that there was no way I was gonna Darian. He doesn't seem like that bad of a guy. I mean, he's a little bit of a fuck, but he seems to also be someone that maybe his dreams aren't being valued the way this would have valued them, or Viserys.
Yeah, I just think the character has a good read on what he is and what he's not. He's not trying to be king, he's not trying to be a hero. He does have some measure of honor and loyalty, but he's in this sick, twisted world and you know, he's using the medicine of alcohol to get him through it and, just doing the best he can.
Settle down, Dario, with your sick, twisted world references. He says he'll go to hell without wine. So, big wine guy he is. I guess that doesn't surprise us. We end up with Sir Dunk going back to the scene of the crime at the puppet theater. We see him holding a head that's Hamlet esque, but I don't know enough to. I mean, it wasn't like a skull, or I don't know. They seem to make that a shot for a reason, and I doubt it's not that reference.
I thought it was the fool night that she did that little thing, like all men are fools and all fools are knights or something
I
like
mean,
that.
that was definitely part of it, and that was the full night head, but you just
Yeah.
see him holding a head like, I'm sure it's some sort of to be or not to be dog and pony show. We end up having old Steely Dan, Steely Pete. He gives him a shield. He has reinforced it a little bit. Dunk just starts crying in front of him. Aren't you like, there's no crying in baseball at some point? But he only charges him a copper, and he explains that the summer leaves are alive, and that his shield is positive. Dunk sees it as like a depressing thing. Thoughts on that?
I thought he might have been a little bit moved by the shield. Maybe it's his Tansel boner, or maybe it's just the immensity of everything going on. One thing I didn't realize when a couple episodes back when they were talking about the design for his coat of arms, is that it's basically like the cover art for the show, the elm and the falling star. And I'm like, oh, it's been there all along. And I never really knew that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I didn't even like really totally piece that together other than I knew they picked the elm because that's where you like to like sleep or whatever. And
And drop a deuce.
yeah, what have you. And then, the falling star scene, obviously, but I
I
hadn't
got to
looked
go
that
take a what
closely.
have you.
So we get to the eventual battle. The dude broken leg from last week that got his horse killed. Apparently, he's got a backup horse in the stable. I think it's Sir One-Eyed Robin, One-Eyed Willie.
But he was the guy from the beginning of the last episode that just came out in the woods when we were doing horse
Yeah.
training.
And I'm trying to think of who, to me, I remember like there's certain characters, the uncle of Jon Snow, or isn't there like who's the other guy that just keeps appearing out of nowhere, I thought, in
Was
Game of
that Bran?
Thrones?
Uncle Bran or
Yeah,
Benjen?
yeah, Benjen. And then there's another weird one, but he just kind of has like those types of like George Martin vibes. There's Tom Bombadil and Radagast and Bjorn, and they're all kind of like versions of the same character. We did get Lionel. I thought Egg was funny. Like, we do find out that Egg had recruited Lionel. And in the background, Egg is like axing around. I don't know why, but I just found it really funny. And then I think Lionel said that there hadn't been one in, was it like a couple hundred years or 700 years or something? I know earlier they said it was like invented by the Andals 6,000 years ago, but it sounded like it had been less time since it had been invoked. And yeah, then we get the big stir Stefan FU scene. He's been promised some sort of lordship or nobleship or a sack of oranges to get the scurvy away. What did you make of his big turn there?
I felt, and I think maybe that you did okay. Our read was right on this piece of, and it seems, this is what Arian's scheme was to just kind of load the situation, put Dunk in a position where he's going to have to forfeit and, outfox old Dunk into having to submit. But nothing ever goes that easily in these shows.
Yeah, I think one time Snooki tried to load the situation, but I'm not sure.
Big Jersey Shore fan, are you?
I think your experience with fantasy, I would say, has a little more depth than mine, as mine is pretty Lord of the Rings centric. Never really got into a lot of, I did Disney Sword in the Stone, really never got a lot into the really King Arthur stuff or the Merlin stuff. But we get a lot of these knight tenants, I would say. So one of them is any knight can make a knight. I think I've heard that before, but I don't know that I would know that right offhand. So Raymond is asking to be knighted. Being
Doesn't
knighted,
like Jamie do it for Brienne of Tarth at one point?
he does, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But that also too was he was on the King's Guard. So in my head, it wasn't like any knight can make a knight, like
It was like yeah,
just
a
say the
special
line
night.
bar. But I'm not saying it wasn't framed that way, but I didn't have enough knight knowledge, knighting knowledge to know that.
Yeah, it seems kind of fast and loose, like any dude with a canoe can perform a marriage or something.
I think that is the thing, though. The save the line part of it all is like, in the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. In the name of the father, to be
Another Daniel
just.
Day-Lewis movie.
The mother, to protect the young and innocent. It is definitely not like the marriage vows of the Sept. I think that one's a little fruitier, but I forget how that one goes. But this was all fine. But you're building all these codes of these knights. And
I also got it seems like Dunk has to do it and he just stands there kind of dumbfounded until like time runs out and he's got to go get ready. And I figured he didn't even know the correct lines to do it properly. So
yeah,
thankfully Lionel like steps in, okay, I've rehearsed this speech.
I thought earlier when he was talking to Plumber that he was kind of like, I said, or I know all the lines, but I definitely believe you that it's more likely he didn't know them. So he doesn't have enough people because of this big screw job at the end, and he didn't know that they couldn't just fight short. So he asks for a moment, which he is allowed a moment, and he starts asking the crowd, and we get the brute of Bracken, who just lays a big fart on the whole thing. Now, I am not a big fan of fart humor. What did you make of this?
It seemed like some low-hanging fruit of the loom, but it was still kind of funny. And I want to say, weren't they doing the Game of Thrones music building up into the fart?
I can't remember. I know they get to it in this scene, but I didn't know if it was before, after, or both. But that is
So
pretty
that's
funny.
like a couple times of where we've had the buildup of
Yeah.
you know, and something coming out of the ass.
There we go. Better than going in, I guess. We get the big dunk speech. Are there no true knights among you? And finally, Targunkel, old Baylor, comes to the rescue. He's going to fight on the side of Sir Dunk. And the comment is, one knight's supposed to defend the innocent or be of honor, etc., etc. What did you make of that? I think it's a surprise turn, right? I mean, it's like
Well, definitely, I
in in,
think,
in retrospect, it's not like shocking, but it's like I wasn't sitting there waiting on it, I guess.
yeah. And at first, I had to figure out that it was Baylor. I'm like, okay, this is somebody we know until I saw like the dragon sigil on his breastplate. But they just had this Blackfire Rebellion not too long ago in the history, which I thought was Targaryen versus Targaryen.
It was, I think, I don't know if they were the Blackfires, but I think they were. It was like Blackfires versus Targaryen, the bastards. Like, I don't think they were in name only kind of thing. But
Okay.
yes, but
And the
that's
point is like
accurate though.
the Targaryens are definitely weakened. They're not at their same point, and rather than rallying together, we see the same old like inbreeding and infighting that they're well known for. And so it's this could really not bode well. And then that made me think of the dream that Darian had. So was it more metaphorical than literal in that Dunk had this slain dragon, meaning he kind of killed that line of Targaryens in charge or started the end of it. And he didn't necessarily kill it, but he was there like looming over a dead dragon, meaning like the lineage or their good days were coming to an end, and he played a pivotal role in it. And maybe perchance some of the schism that happens through this that's already there within the family, he like exacerbates. That's my theory.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting theory. I don't want to get too timeline into it because I think we're trying to stay a little bit naked to the overall, but I think we'll know, and I do not know. By the end of the season, we'll know if it's maybe more relative to this season or if over this string of novellas, it's going to be like one of those hanging prophecies. But we've got two potential prophecy hangers here. Tom would be glad that they're hung like Mounties. Any other close up you got? We got 2 episodes left. I know you said this wasn't as good as 3, but better than 1 and 2. Any feels on the season for where we're at right now?
Yeah, it's just a different type of show, but now that I've got my sea legs about it, the character dynamics are just fantastic. And it doesn't seem like where we cover other shows, then there might be like weaker storylines or weaker characters. There's really nobody when they pop on screen, like they're all adding. It doesn't seem like anybody's really subtracting where we eye roll and go, oh, this guy's back. It
Yeah,
seems like very well portioned out.
I mean, maybe every time someone starts spraying, it's not the funnest time at the end, but I think they nailed Duncan Egg, and most of the other actors are doing good in their roles. And so casting nailed it. The script, the story was generally already there, and it's got that typical HBO production. But they did also, they made some bold choices with some of this humor and basically, in some ways, on the tradition of the show itself, and that could have gone very bad, and it seems so far like it's playing well for him.
I like that. All we need is somebody to give Craig a boob and the
Yeah,
Lego my Aegon
I'm like Steve Martin. All I need is my ashtray and my set of boobs, and I'm good.
and this lamp.
we do have a show to get started on. We're going to start doing Euphoria with Jessica Z soon, the return. And I did no free ads, but Jessica Z sent me a delightful Derek shirt.
Oh,
So that was nice when I came home from my business trip last night. It was sitting on my counter. So thank you, Z, for mailing that in. To be clear, she did not place it on my counter, but I received my aunt, took it from the mail, put it on my counter. So yeah, thanks, Z, for the delightful Derek shirt, and we look forward to.
that's a nice shout out that I'm sure she'll never watch or listen to.
Yeah, she's definitely our number one listener on the podcast for sure. The funny thing is, she did listen more before she was on the podcast, but it was also because she was walking her kids a lot. But that's what she would do. Was when the kids were younger, she'd walk them in the stroller and listen to our podcast. And now she just has to make sure her daughter isn't hanging all the crosses in the house upside down or something.
Not throwing all the cats in the neighborhood in a.
She's a well thrower, and I'll be shocked if she doesn't take a knife to Gary Jr.'s nards.